First of all, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking time out and joining this webinar. We have been doing this webinar from quite some time now. We have very good resources. We have been doing podcasts as well. I would really encourage you to go through, our YouTube and have a lot of learning material around how to build reliable AI agents. I'm Nikhil Parikh, first of all, founder and CEO at Future AGI. We are a developer tool where we can use us to really create reliable AI agents. We have research-based evaluations model, which are right now the top class and can detect hallucinations in anything. So I'm joined with my colleague, and he's our founding member, Rishav. First of all, Rishav, over to you. Why don't you do a quick introduction?
Thanks, Nikhil. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. I am Rishav. I am an applied scientist here at Future AGI, where, as Nikhil said, we are building an evaluation and observability platform. I've been in the AI evaluation space for a while now, and I've seen it evolve more so in the last couple of years. Uh, Today, we are at a time where LLMs are able to take actions on our behalf. So our evaluations also need to evolve with that, and that is what we learned in the last couple of webinars. And that is what we are trying to do here at Future AJ. I'm super excited for the topic that we have today. I had a lot of fun building certain MCPs just while preparing for the webinar. And I'm super excited to get into a conversation with everyone.
Yeah. I would like, okay, the first quick question from our chat. So, how many of you really have created, let's say, an AI application, and that has really worked great when you're testing it, but it doesn't work, or just hallucinates when you have given to your real users? So maybe just some chats or some messages, in the comment, because we have been working with a lot of guys, which has a similar story. Like, what our the agent that we tested has really worked in our dev environment, but we have a lot of customer churn and didn't really work, when we ship to our end users. So, would love to know your story in the chat. Yeah, I think lots of guys. So that has been the same story with the teams that you have been building with MCPs. They have a similar story where they created an chat application, interacting with their application. So basically a Claude which interact with, you can chat with their application on Claude, but it really worked really in a funny way, and the tool calling and it didn't work fine. And this has been a very common point throughout the industry. So I think, and has been common ask from a long time. So we took a time to build this webinar around for a webinar. So what is really actually MCP? And how can you create the MCPs which really work for your customers? Before we start on that, I think first of all I would take some time, uh, you know, to have a shout out to our team. So we are starting a startup program at Future AGI, and we are giving 6 months of our pro subscription for free with five k credits. So I think have been in startups for a long time as a founder and helping other startups as well. And from startup, I know it's really hard to build, and it needs a lot of support, to get from that initial to up. So that's why we also giving back to the startup communities. So they don't think about building the infrastructure near around there, but really create trustworthy AI applications which works for their end users. So I think we'll wait for some time so that teams can actually take the picture of that. This is a form. We already have, I think, hundreds of applications for this. Would really would be great if people who are joining this webinar, they can share it with their friends and their any of the founders who are actually working on this. Cool. I think Rishabh, we can get started.
Awesome. So let's start with the basics. What is actually Model Context Protocol? MCP is is a standardized way of communication that Anthropic has built that allows you to communicate between your AI or LLM systems and external data sources and tools. So by now we know that LLMs are great and very powerful, but they're limited with their training knowledge, so which gets cut off at some point, and they do not have knowledge beyond that. So what people have started doing, they have found several ways of connecting external tools that can take certain actions using LLMs, or even connecting data sources. This can be proprietary data or any other data which is more updated to get certain actions done by these LLMs. So far we were doing it in a very ad hoc way. There was no standard way of communicating with these tools and data sources, right? So there were a lot of possibilities for us to get an error. Now think of it in a way of website or web applications. What is HTTPS in the links that you have for your website? It is a standard way with which you communicate with these websites. So generally in web applications, there are certain requests like get request, post request, and these are all standardized requests that developers have built over time so that they can send these requests to the servers and get the response in a standardized way, such as a JSON format, and that can then be rendered on your screens or certain actions can be taken. So MCP does exactly that, but for AI systems and external tools and data sources. As I said, before MCP, this is how it looked like. We had a lot of external tools available that we connected to our LLMs by ourselves. This was using certain tool calls, or you would write custom code to integrate each of these different connectors. Now, imagine it can be something 20 connectors, 50 connectors, or 100 connectors, and you have to manage the code on your own for all of these. And if certain changes are made at the provider's end, you need to update your code as well to take those changes into consideration. What MCP does is it streamlines this entire way of communication between your LLM or AI system and these external connectors. So you can imagine it is in the form of a USB port where all these different connections go into a single USB hub, and that is then connected to your MCP client. Now, the core architecture of MCP, it has three core components. First is your MCP host. This can be your Claude desktop, your IDEs such as Cursor or VS Code, or your co-pilots. They will have a client which communicates with these MCP servers that you have connected. Let's take the example. Let's take some popular example. This is my Claude desktop. Now here I have connected a GitHub MCP server. So if you go to settings and you see over here in developer mode, I have connected the GitHub server which is running. And GitHub has a standard way of how you can connect their MCP to your hosts, and you can just paste that configuration into your console, and the MCP exposes certain tools that you can access. So let's take a look at the tools that have been exposed. Now, GitHub has exposed a lot of these different tools, such as adding pull requests, creating new branches, creating repository, forking repository. So all of the actions that you can do on GitHub that you were earlier doing via CMD or so using certain other tools, now you can just write simple natural language queries and those actions can be taken. So let's take an example. I've already connected my GitHub over here, and I will ask it to list all my repos. Let's see what it does. Here it first reasons what it needs to do, and then it does a search repositories. It has my user ID, and it does a search repository function. It calls that, and it goes on to list all the different repositories that I have. So it has certain public repositories, it has certain private repositories. Now let's go one step further. What is rule it above? So this is one of the older repos that I had created for a research paper. Here it calls the function get file content, and it'll read the README file and it'll summarize what this particular repo is about. Now here what you can do is also access the code in each of these files, and as we all are using certain co-pilots in our day-to-day work to write certain pieces of code, you can directly ask it to make modifications in the code and also push it in your repos. For example, just by a single line, it'll create a new repo as well. Now imagine the power of this. For example, if you can if you can add a Figma MCP here, you can directly give access to Figma designs and ask it to write the code basis on that Figma design, right? So that increases the productivity a lot. And then with the help of your co-pilots, you can directly push the code and iterate over it. So that increases the way that you are communicating with these different services, and you can leverage them in your day-to-day work to increase your productivity as well. There are several like popular MCPs available currently. As we saw, GitHub is a very powerful MCP that you can integrate with your hosts. There are other MCPs such as Slack or PostgreSQL. Now, here you can give a very simple natural language query that is converted into an SQL command, and then it can run operations on your Postgres databases. You can also connect your Google Drive with your hosts, or you can also connect Puppeteer, which is a browser automation tool. So we'll see an example of this later in this webinar. So you can access your browser activities as well just using these tools. And there are many more MCPs that you can use in your day-to-day work. So all of this is great. It allows you to take a lot of actions in a much more streamlined way. It provides a very standardized protocol of how you communicate with these different things. You do not have the overheads of how you used to call different tools and you used to connect them with your system. So what people are doing now, they want to leverage this, because going forward, people are imagining that you will be just communicating with the LLM systems to, access different services. For example, making a booking on flights using a certain MCP, or ordering something on Amazon. All of this would be eventually possible just by communicating with your chatbots. But when you're building your own MCPs, a lot of considerations also come into play. There are still a lot of ways it can go wrong. So as we saw earlier, the GitHub exposed a lot of different functionalities. Now it needs to pick the right functionality with the right parameters being passed into these different functions, and whether the right actions have been taken or not. All of these come into consideration. As we have already learned in our previous webinars, that Gen AI is highly non-deterministic. So all these LLMs, we cannot trust the output that these LLMs are generating, because these are already black boxes. And if they're taking actions on our behalf, we can never be sure whether the actions were fulfilled correctly. So that is why we have to set up a lot of evaluations in place to know whether and where things are exactly going wrong, and to get a deep insight. If you have built, suppose, an agentic system, you want to get a trace of all the things that are going on in the background to get a deeper understanding of where things can improve, and of course then have a continuous improvement over it, because as it is evolving, you need to change different moving parts so that you can get the best accuracy before this is sent into production, before people are using it. And also, while people are using it, as and when you face errors, you need to keep improving on them as well. What can go wrong without evaluations? As we've already seen, that it can produce a lot of hallucinated content. For example, it can tell you that a certain action was taken, but in the background that action was not did not go through, or the incorrect tool calls were made, the incorrect parameters were passed when calling those functions. There can be a lot of latency as well when these servers are not responding, and you are overly relying on your prompts just to get most out of the system that you're trying to build. But prompts might not always be the issue. There are other things and other connectors as well that you need to take care of to see whether the system is performing well. So before we go further, Nikhil, what are some MCPs that you have been using in your day-to-day work, and what has your experience been?
I have connected my cloud with everything, the linear Notion, my Gmail, but I connect, use it with very quotiently, as you were saying, because and always don't trust the things that I'm getting. But I've connected all the apps that are there. For example, okay, you know what? To create one ticket on linear, we have to create some PRDs that has been very helpful. I would say like code reviewing is also has been, a little easier because we can be very fast with that. For example, okay, you know what, this PR is there, and it's like, okay, let's review that PR, and has been very, 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 very helpful. And we also can't see few optimization techniques which they are also able to suggest. And to be frank, my mail is flooded with emails, and there are a lot of spams, a lot not spams. So the first thing that I do every morning is what are some useful mails that I got and that I need to answer, and it just lists me, you know what, you got this mail from this guy, from this customer, and etc. And I can quickly respond on that. But yeah, I think, but I don't rely on replying them because it can go to someone else. It has happened with me. So it's a
Oh, so you already did it send an email to an incorrect person?
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I just rely on, gathering all the things that I have to do, but don't actually, execute the actions, because hallucination is bad. So yeah, I think that has been my experience, Rishabh.
Awesome. Okay, so now we'll do a deep dive into like one of the codes that we have written. For the first example, we have a very simple MCP that we have built to walk you through what MCPs are capable of. So one of the core components here is how you can set up like different servers. This is a simple chatbot MCP that we have here. We have connected two different MCP servers. One is the SQLite, so that provides you all the SQL functionalities such as create table, insert into table, delete table, all sorts of those things. And the other one is Puppeteer, which allows you certain website automations or browser automations. We
Rishabh,
have
why don't you zoom a little on just,
uh,
yeah.
just Yeah, so I have configured these two different servers in my servers config, and then this is the main gist, main part where all these tools come into play. There's a very simple prompt for this case that we have written. You're a helpful assistant with access to these tools, and these are tools that have been exposed to us via the MCP servers. And what it does is this is a one-shot thing where the user query goes in, it decides based on the tools it has what tools does it need to call. It goes on and does that action for you. So let's see it live in action. I've already run this file, and let me first ask, what tools do you have? It has listed all the tools it has access to. So, for example, in case of SQL, it has read query, write query, create table. And for website automation, it can take a screenshot, it can navigate to a certain page and do those things. So, let me say, create a table called webinar. It has created the table called webinar, and I can insert into this table, or one of the Puppeteer action would be open gmail.com. So it opens gmail.com on, the browser. Similarly, we can ask it to do other actions. So insert into table and do all of that. I have run a few queries already. So list all tables in the database, create a tables product, insert into table, delete from this table, uh, open gmail.com, sign in, all sorts of these queries I have already run. Now, one of the problems with this could be that the right tools are not being called, or even if it is being called, the tool execution failed for some reason because the right parameters weren't passed and the user query was not addressed correctly. For that, we need to set up evaluations. Here, I have set up. evaluations using the future AGI observe and prototype feature. So here I can set up different evaluations such as tool calling. This becomes one of the very important evaluations in these cases, where we check whether the right tools were invoked or not, and whether the right parameters were passed within the tool. Right. Some other evaluations would be completeness, so whether the user query was answered or not, and something like conversation resolution, whether the conversation led to some resolution for the user. I have already run this through all the different queries that I showed earlier. And what you would do is set up a trace provider, such as this, where you mark it as an experiment, because I was experimenting with different things over here. And because I'm calling the model through Grok, you can simply pass a Grok instrumenter, and this takes the entire trace of events that is happening and logs it on our platform. So let's go to the platform and take a look of what got logged over there. This is how the prototype looks like on our platform. This will track all your runs, and you can see all the different metrics that I had configured over here: conversation resolution, completeness, function calls. And let's take a deeper look into what happened. So here you see all the queries that I had run through the system. The first one was, I think, around listing all the tables that you have. So as I was showing the prompt earlier, see, this is what the system prompt looks like. You are a helpful assistant, and then there's a list of all the different tools it has access to. And in the end, within the user, we'll have the user query as well. So the first one was list all tables in the database, and then it goes on to call the list tables function with whatever arguments were needed. And you can see this was captured in the metrics as well. So in the function call, we can see that it has passed, and there's an explanation as well. Correct tool identification, the assistant accurately selected the list tables tool with proper formatting. Now let's take a look at one of the cases where it failed. So this function call had failed, and this is like very easily noticeable on the dashboard. And let's see what went wrong over here. This is the entire chat history. Uh, if we scroll down, the user query was hover over the help menu item. So I think it was something around open Gmail and then hover over the help menu item. So here you can see it did call the puppeteer hover for hovering over the help menu item, and it passed something in it. But let's see what happened here. So the tool calling failed, and the reason behind it is the need for a tool call was correctly identified. However, execution failed as evidenced by the error. So probably tried to click, but whatever selector or the medium it was trying to click on wasn't clear. So you can see that the tool execution had failed over here. It wasn't able to hover over the help menu item, and that is what was captured in the evaluation as well. That the tool calling over here had failed, so which led to a low completeness and conversation resolution score as well. So it did identify the right function, but the function call did not go through, and that was captured using evaluation. Now you can make changes here to know like what went wrong, so that you can take care of these things. And that is where evaluation becomes really important, to know where things are exactly failing, so that how you can handle those edge cases, so that when people are actually using it, you provide them with a much more robust system. This was one of the simpler examples where it was very easy. This was just one shot where the user query goes in and the actions are taken based on however the query was processed. We'll now take a look into one of more advanced use cases where we have a research assistant. Now we have all, at least I have been using deep research a lot these days, which helps me do a lot of research, and it gets all the content from the internet and it produces it in a very neat way, so that I don't have to do spend time doing all of that. So this is similar to that. This is a research assistant which can, go through archive, get certain documents, and then do certain processing on it as well. Here we have created our own MCP server. The first one is an archive server. right? So what an archive server will do here is get the user query and then search on archive for that particular whatever user query is, and then return the content. This is how you create an MCP. You have exposed certain tools using the MCP tool decorator. Here we have a search archive functionality. It does nothing, but it calls this get article function, which takes in the user query, process goes to the archive server, and then returns the result back. We have another server called the docking server. Docking server has two MCP tools over here. One is the extract article content, so it can process PDF documents, and it can read those documents and maybe do some summarization over it, and also maybe get certain article previews you want if you want that. And these are the tools that have been exposed via these servers. I have the main file, which is the client server. Here you can see that in our MCP client, I have attached these two servers. So it will have the archive functionality and the docking functionality as well. And I'll just go to the UI that we have for this, and it'll just call the MCP servers to take certain actions. So let's
Yeah.
take a look at the UI.
And this runs, everything runs on locally. I think few of the things you guys are asking. So your MCP. So when do you mean where it does run is end of the day it is making LLM API calls to the hyperscalers. For example, whatever you're using. For example, we use Claude or OpenAI. So end of the day, if you're using let's say Claude or let's your favorite coding assistant, there it is installed, but end of the day, it is making a call to the hyperscalers. So, so what you see right now here is everything is running locally. You can set up, you can just clone all these repos, and then you can try it by yourself. You can play around with it and everything, but everything is runs locally, but sends to end of the day to LLMs.
Yeah. This is the UI for the research assistant. Here, it's a simple, again, chatbot sort of an interface where I'm simulating the MCP locally. So I've already asked a few questions here. For example, research about transformers. It goes on to archive. It gets the relevant articles. It shows me a preview of all of these articles. Then I can ask it to summarize the article, so it processes the PDF document, it gets the relevant chunks, and then it gives me an answer and a summary of the entire PDF as well. I can ask other questions as well, such as who are the authors of this particular paper, or I can ask it to, like, I can be a little bit more specific. For example, research about RLHF in 2025. So it can go on and do that research and give me certain papers relevant to it. Now, here as well, as we saw last time, that tool calls can still fail. So I've set up a few evaluations over here. For example, the first one would, of course, be the tool call functionality to see whether the right tools were invoked and the right parameters were passed in. Because in this case, we can often ask to generate a summary of a certain paper. I've also implemented
Yeah.
the summary quality functionality to see how the what is the quality of the generated summary. We want the summaries or the other content to be grounded in whatever the research paper has. So I've implemented the hallucination evaluation as well, and then there are other functionalities, other evaluations such as completeness. One thing that I've implemented here is the paper relevance, check paper relevance metric, which is a custom metric. Here, I wanted to check whether the papers that were retrieved using the search functionality are they relevant to the user query or not. So this is a very custom metric, and I did that on the Future AGI platform. I first went and built a custom metric, and then here I could configure that in the trace provider using the eval tags. So similarly, here we have an agentic workflow. The agent does a bit of planning first using LangChain, and then it invokes the functionalities as needed, right? So here I have again done a trace provider, and I've done an instrumenter using LangChain instrumentation. Now we'll take a look at the UI again. This is what the different queries I had made, for example, research about transformers. And again, we can see all the metrics over here, such as check paper relevance, completeness, hallucination, summary quality. Let's take a look into the spans. Here you can see that LangGraph did some planning and then invoked certain agents. So all of these different steps are being tracked over here, and you can set up evaluations at each of these different spaces depending on your use case. Right. So here you can see that the search archive function was called because I'd asked it to research about transformers, and we have the tool calling function evaluation as passed. Output correctly identifies the need for a tool call, which is search archive, and correctly included the parameters as well. Now, check paper relevance metric is also there. It is passed and it says 4 out of 5 papers are directly related to the query, and the fifth paper is also indirectly related because it discusses about transformers. Now, let's see, I'd asked it to produce a summary as well that should be here in the second query. Here it extracted the article content from the paper. Again, the tool calling and those things are passed, and then it passes it to here for generating the summary. So you see that the summary quality metric comes here along with the hallucination and completeness.
Yeah.
Uh, if I hover over the summary quality metric,
I think we can take a moment over here.
yeah,
And so for example, a lot of customer use cases that we have been seeing is maybe internal search, analytics, for finance use cases, or for end user text to SQL use cases, and those sort of things, right? Or even like, let's say, automating a lot of tasks on Salesforce, where the user can just go on, type something, and something can be done. So in those cases, let's say you're giving your users those features. So you cannot go and create a lot of. So basically, end of the day, you have to create tools, right? So you have certain tools, for example, 5 or 6 tools. End of the day, for example, applying for leave, or having a internal search, or let's say the tool can be for analytics. So all these tools, they can be broken down into MCPs, that you have different MCPs. So let's say you are building something for your end users. So how do you make sure that your MCP that you're created for internal user base is working correctly? So that's what, like, the search is actually a real world, let's say, can be a enterprise search that you have been creating for your use case or for your customers that can be deployed in house, right? And then okay, I tested it for, let's say, my I gave it to my team and it worked fine. But this is not what your users will use for, and that has been a very big learning curve for us as well. So they will use in the wild. They can type anything that you cannot even think of, right? But how do you make sure that you're learning correctly? You are identifying each of the steps that your LLM is taking is correct, right? So for example, so this is one of the MCP that you see. So if you see, these are the LLM thing, these are the thing that LLM did, and that's really crazy for just one query. So Rishabh, why don't we just scroll it down, right? So that's exactly the same. So for example, let's say if you ask your cursor for reviewing a PR, very simple thing. It will do tens of things. It will go on. It will use some tool called Kit, and maybe search on the web for the things it doesn't know, and do these crazy things. So end of the day, if you are creating something like this for end users, it will have crazy these kinds of spans, and it is really hard to debug it. Trust me, it's really hard to find out where it went wrong. Um, and trust me, it will went wrong. We haven't achieved, these LLMs cannot do everything. They are end of the day probabilistic. How glorified a benchmarking that they have done end of the day, they will fail for sure. So you cannot have a system end of the day saying to your customers, you know what, it fails 10% of the time. You cannot say that, right? So how do you get it from the 90% out of the box to very reliable system for which your customers trust you end of the day? So, so this is what you can use for knowing, okay, you know what? These are the areas where it is working good, but these are the areas where we need to improve much, much on. Over to you, Rishabh.
Yeah, so these are also like very simple sort of use cases that we have set up for the webinar. Of course, there are a lot of other moving components involved, and you want to get a good grip and understanding of what all these different components are, because already these LLMs are black boxes. And then if you do not have good control of the different components that you are using along, the problems and the errors can just get exponential. So this sort of way is a very useful way to see at each of these different spans what are the things that can go wrong. You can see the different tool calls, you can see the different agents that are being invoked, what went into each of the LLM calls and what came out of it, and set up evaluations at each of these places to know exactly where things are going wrong so that you can improve on them.
And by the way, I think last week also just want to say we can take a moment on and so we trained our own models. So all these evaluation that you are seeing, are much much higher accuracy than an LLM as a judge. So why don't you show that, Rishabh, right?
Yeah.
So we released this last week. I think the research papers are coming, in 2 weeks. And we are also making few models public, open source. So these are the few models that we have. They are very cheap, but at par as even like the highest models that you can see, from the OpenAI in evaluating these models are correct or not. So you can use them and at scale to know if the application is working correctly or not.
And this is also where you create your custom evals. So for example, I created the eval for paper relevance. I can directly create an eval over here, give certain name, choose the model, write whatever I want to evaluate, and then just create the evals. This is a custom evaluation, but we also have a lot of pre-built evaluations for various use cases. Okay. We saw two different use cases now, and we realize like MCPs also can go wrong, especially in the way that the tool calls are made or the things that are retrieved via the different functionalities that are exposed to it. That is why something like observe and evaluation becomes very important. So whatever we saw was on experiment or the prototype feature from future AGI. That is when you are different very rapidly trying to experiment with different moving components. But once you are happy with what you have built, you can deploy it using our observe, and where you will get a real time monitoring of all the different traces. It will be you can see it exactly how we saw currently, and you can set up alerts as well. So you can receive alerts on your email when certain metrics are taking a dip, and then you can go and investigate what is going wrong. With that, we also made our own MCP server for future AGI. We via the MCP server, which you can connect with different hosts such as Cursor, Claude, OpenAI, and you can do different actions such as upload data directly to our platform, create synthetic data, automatically configure certain evals, do experiments, set up, observe, or even protect, which is our guardrailing features, and get responses and within like less than 100 milliseconds. You can imagine one of the queries using future AGI MCP server would look something like, can you create synthetic data to run my agent and evaluate across a criteria of your choice? Explain how you arrived at these scores. So what it will do is it will log into future AGI, create that synthetic data for you, run evaluations on those, and then maybe even like go through those evaluations and produce it and produce all the insights just on your chat, right? So you don't have to do a single action. You just need to give a natural language query, and all of these actions are taken care of. We also have another MCP server, which by which you can add the future AGI docs to your clients. And once you do that, you can directly, when you're communicating with your clients, they can automatically write code or do certain implementations for you using the doc MCP that it has. I want to show certain use cases that are possible using the future AGI MCP. So, for example, here we have certain text and we want to test it on toxicity. We can very easily give this to the Claude Desktop or even your cursor, which has a context of your files, and it'll go ahead and it'll run that evaluation. If you have an image, you can run evaluations for image as well. And one of the use cases would look like, can you find that file, rack chat, run certain evaluations, and give me insights from that? So it'll go ahead and it'll do all of those tasks. So first, it'll find the rack file, it'll get a list of all the evaluations available from Future AGI, figure out the relevant evaluations for your particular use case, run them, and finally produce the insights, right? So, for example, in this case, context relevance score was 74%, and other evaluations as well, factual accuracy, groundedness, all of those. You can also directly generate synthetic data from your clients. So here you can give certain queries regarding what kind of data you want, and it goes onto the Future AGI platform and creates that data and downloads that for you. Or you can even set up observe using the future AGI MCP server. Nikhil, do you want to add anything?
I think no. So, adding observability to a platform and everything, it's really hard, and everyone have been vibe coding, right? Uh, so while you're creating your agents and everything, you're testing your applications, need to create synthetic data and everything. Just one line of, natural language, not even code, right? So one line of natural language query, and we have been seeing a lot of success in creating real world like data and end-to-end testing from the customer. So yeah, I would really encourage you guys to. We have done a lot of hard work on this, so just try that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like really easy now to set up evaluations just using the Future AGI MCP server. So you should definitely try out the evaluations as well as the MCP server itself. To conclude, we have already seen that even though MCP provides us a very standardized and powerful way to communicate with the different connectors, there are still ways in which it can go wrong. So for a real-time pulse check, something like observability that streams every MCP call to the dashboard, it helps you spot latency, tool failures, or evaluation failures in real time so that you can make fixes as and when you notice them. From speculations, you can move to guarantees because you get a good trace of the entire events that are going on. So you know exact spots where things are failing, whether it is tool call or whether it is context passing into different tools. All of these things can be spotted and those things can be fixed. You really want to red team your system because how end users use it is very different from when you are testing it within your companies. So you want to like really red team and make your systems future proof using evals so that you can go ahead with very robust applications when you're putting them out for public. And finally, you want to like rapidly learn about what errors that can occur and fix them as soon as possible instead of just trying to do vibe checks and seeing whether where things are going wrong. With that, we can have question and answers.
I think one of the first question was how is reinforcement learning or self-supervision integrated into an MCP pipeline?
Like in MCP pipeline, like we do not directly integrate reinforcement learning or supervised learning. We are using some model that has already been trained using RLHF or supervised learning. And what we do is provide it access to certain tools. For example, we can add tools for Gmail so that it can write certain emails or send emails on your behalf. So MCP is a way to add external tools and database to your already trained models.
Yeah. I think it also depends on the task that you're trying to do. Maybe when MCP is, let's say, an environment for you where you want to interact with, and then you have a cost function, and then you want to do something, but you don't know the task that you are trying to do. But we haven't seen that. What we have seen, you have a different type of agent for getting where your current LLM is going wrong, and then getting feedback to improve on the current loop. For example, you have been trying to research something, and then the LLM actually hallucinated, and then you have an agent with kind of course corrected. Oh yeah, you are going on the wrong path. You have to do this. So self correction can be over there, but we haven't seen RL or something like that being integrated. So can I use MCP into my existing cursor environment? Yeah, you guys, you can just go over there. There are a lot of settings you can find and just integrate into that. People have, so, one thing is there are a lot of repository for MCP, which you can find of, you know, now actually there are repositories or MCP repositories because there are so many MCPs that are out there that you can find out for any task that is there. So just try that out for anything that you have been doing.
Yeah, there is a website, I think MCP.io, which has like all the popular MCPs available and all the trending MCPs, so you can connect all of these to your
Yeah.
different clients.
So don't know how does MCP client get into my okay, yeah. Let's um so that is more like a technical thing, Ajay. So like how does MCP client let's say cursor talk to the server HTTP or GSPC? So I think the thing that we showed you right in the code, um, internally it does do the same thing in a different way, right? So it have tools, kind of checks which tool to use, which tools don't, and not to use, and then just calls LMs. Yeah. Uh, okay. And what kind of evals can we run exactly? Like anything for audio or video using MCP? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so all the evals that are available on the Future AGI platform are possible to run via the Future AGI MCP server as well. So yes, we have evals for audio, we have evals for images, so you can directly run them. You like if you are using certain clients, you might not even have to name these evaluations. Based on the file, the clients should pick the right evaluations for you. So we have evaluations around audio quality, audio transcription or image caption hallucination, and you can use them right out of the box.
I think one more question is how does Claude chooses which tool to use when testing an agent?
Yeah, that is where the context comes in. So each tool comes with a description and how it is supposed to be called. So when I showed how the GitHub functionalities were integrated, they all had a description. So Claude or other such clients will have all that context plus the context of what you are trying to do, and it'll try to do certain context mapping and then choose the right functionality for you. But this is where it can go wrong. It can maybe the right functionalities are not triggered or the right parameters are not passed, and that is where these things can start failing.
Yeah. I think that brings us to the end of the session that we have. There's more questions, but I think that's all the time that we have right now. Great, guys. I hope that you had a great time in learning about MCPs. If you have any questions, you can DM on LinkedIn and reach out to us on that. We can have the conversation going. We also have a community on Slack. You can continue your journey over there. But one of the main thing that I want to still tell, if you guys are building something new, something exciting, we are there to help you. I think, Rishabh, can you go on the previous slide that we have? So we're there to help you. You don't have to think about, heavy observability tools, which can cost you, hole in your pocket, and when you are when you're scaling, you know, we are there to support you. I know how hard it can be for a journey. We have we have active community on that. So yeah, guys, thanks a lot. Thank you everyone. Thanks for joining today.